Hello, everyone. Really excited to join you all today. Welcome to Building Your Dream Team, strategies for attracting and retaining top talent in construction. We have over 200 construction recruiters that specialize in their local markets across North America. We wanted to share some trends we've been seeing over the couple of years as the industry adapts post 2020. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Niall. I'm a senior director across New England, DMV, and the Carolinas region at Michael Page. We've got 40 recruitment consultants here that cover their markets and their local networks. I've actually been at Michael Page for close to 12 years, specializing in construction. I love construction. I love learning about from our clients and our candidates and what really makes them tick. I'm joined today by my colleague in Chicago, Grace Quinn. Over to you, Grace.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for those of us joining us on Eastern Time. My name is Grace Quinn. I'm the director of our Midwest construction recruitment practice. I've been in the space for 6 years, began my journey in construction recruitment as a recruitment consultant. So had the opportunity to be hands-on, sit down with our candidate and client partners face-to-face, really get to know the industry and the space. And I'm now oversee 8 teams in the Midwest, all of the major metropolitan regions, and focus on our candidate acquisition and client engagement strategies. So we're really excited to be hosting everyone here today. And Niall, I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. I thought just to begin with, we wanted to give a bit of a job market update across the market. We get lots of valuable data. I think we did over 31,000 candidate interviews in 2020. Construction is a $1.9 trillion market here in North America, and it's growing about 7% per year. $1 trillion is a lot of money. And what we've seen, there's been a lot of shifts happening post-pandemic, and we wanted just to provide you with some clear insights of what we've seen. It is a competitive landscape for talent. There's 2 jobs open for every 1 person. The labor market remains incredibly tight. Wage growth has stabilized, which is a good thing. But we still have seen candidates get between 7 and 10% pay rises for moving jobs in 2023. Back in 2022, it was upwards to 20% of what they were seeing. Unemployment is still sub 2%. The reason for that is there's lots of people retiring. I think 1 in 5 people in the construction industry are over 55. The average retirement age is 61. So we are seeing, I suppose, a lot of demand for particular talent across the market. Grace, what have you seen with selective organizations in your area?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think just amidst some uncertainty right now, candidates know that they're still in high demand. So 7 out of 10 of them are demanding top tier salary ranges, But additionally, organizations are just being more selective. They're taking a little bit longer to make their decisions. They're making sure they really do their due diligence. So whereas in 2021 and 2022, companies were able to make decisions on candidates in 5 to 7 days. It was so quick, and it's about twice as long now. So they're spending more time, adding more steps to their process, and we'll go through some tips later on as to effective interview strategies. In terms of the demand for talent, the industry, 88% of the industry is white and 89% is male, and so there continues to be a demand for diverse talent. And that's something that we get calls in for around strategies for attracting and retaining those individuals as well. So firms just overall are being more selective. They're taking more time. They're looking to still continue to diversify their organizations. So now I'll pass back to you for additional thoughts.
To touch on that, I think what a lot of people are doing from a retention point of view is just being selective in choosing candidates that have really good project experience to match the projects that they're going to go on with their owners or their clients or developers to make sure that they're comfortable in their first 6 to 12 months that they've got the skills to deliver. Again, there's been a lot of supply chain concerns with materials. Lots of firms that we work with are continuing to leverage technology to improve productivity, and sharing best practices with technology at the interview stage is a big selling point. In terms of hiring tips, commit to a competitive compensation structure to attract talent. Good people cost money. I think making the base and bonus compensation as clear as possible during the interview and in the offer letter would be a big one. And also just have a really solid employer value proposition. I think putting your culture to the core of the interview and having a strong culture and just being authentic during the interview will create a strong bond with the candidate and hopefully get them secured for your business. We wanted to touch on some roles. We touched on, I suppose, there's lots of people potentially retiring in 2031. I think about 25 to 30% of people in the North American market are going to be retiring in construction, which puts a lot of demand on particular positions. So what we've noticed is project managers, superintendents, and estimators. Grace, what have you seen across this area?
Definitely. I mean, right now, organizations are looking for those game changers, right? People that can come in and have a high impact really from the get-go. So the project experience is important, but people that have demonstrated that they can run projects on their own, that have been client facing before. Historically in 2021 and 2022, it was almost as if companies couldn't get enough, PEs and APMs and field engineers. And now they're really looking for people that can come in and hit the ground running. So 5 to 15 years professional experience across the superintendent track, the project management track, and the pre-construction track seems to be the folks that are in highest demand right now.
Yeah, and the reason we see this is, as I said, 1 in 5 people are over 55 years old in construction. There's been a lot of emphasis on leadership programs for this 5 to 15 year space, because these people will be the next general supers, the next project executives, the VPs, the directors of estimating. So it's really important to find particular talent in this area, retain them, and they'll be able to supplement once people start retiring from the industry as well. We set up close to, I think, 14,500 first rounds last year alone. So we definitely have seen the most in demand across these particular sectors. But the other areas of junior candidates are still in demand, and also more experienced people as well. We also wanted to touch on, to bring this a little bit more to life, was the in-demand markets. Obviously, North America is a really big market, and we cover all the markets with dedicated recruitment specialists in each area. One of the topical ones, I'll pick out two. One is the multifamily space. So one of the markets in North America is still in a really strong position, even that interest rates are increasing, would be multifamily. There's about 940,000 units under construction across the country, which is the most since 1973. As people move to metro areas and housing affordability in certain areas becomes challenging, they can't afford a house, they move to a unit. Myself and Grace were in Austin a few months ago. There was lots of cranes in the sky in Austin. Dallas, Miami, Atlanta, and Phoenix are really hot spots. They're very much in demand, but also locations like New York, Denver, Charlotte, and LA. There's a lot of demand for people with multifamily experience to support the construction activity in that sector. The second market, just to touch on, was we're going through a bit of a renaissance in North America where high-tech manufacturing is coming back. We've seen a lot of the projects with semiconductor, with Samsung, TSM, Intel, investing close to $100 billion across Arizona, Ohio, and Texas. But equally, electric vehicles, battery plants, and the plants that make the electric vehicles, I think North America is going to be one of the global leaders. So states like Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee are going to play a big part. And with all of those two sectors, they play a trickle-down effect as the market ramps up to light industrial, large-scale commercial, and education. So if certain markets remain really buoyant, it's going to support the other markets that we saw really buoyant across 2021 and 2022 as well. Grace, could you share some tips on how to identify a strong candidate in construction?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think the two things that we had just touched on, the roles and the tenure, and then the in-demand markets, that's definitely what companies are looking for. That's actually the easiest part to identify in a resume and a project list, right? So that's pretty easy. But as far as, if you're an organization looking at who you're going to hire and how you're going to retain them, the interview piece is really important, and organizations right now are seeking out a few things from an intangible perspective, right? So the things that you can't necessarily teach or see on a resume. Number one is strong communication skills, right? The industry is ever changing. It's fast paced. Being able to communicate effectively with clients, with your subcontracting partners, right, are so huge. And so at interview stage, companies are weeding people out specifically based on that, even if a candidate has all the things that we just touched on from a resume perspective. Additionally, adaptability. Are they somebody that can pivot quickly? Again, the industry is fast paced. It's ever changing. Construction. I mean, we talk about this now. We love being in the space because it's so fast and exciting, but can the people you're interviewing actually keep up with the work? And how are you identifying that for your specific organization? Again, at interview stage. And then an engaged interview process. Is the candidate prepared? Are they well researched? Do they have an idea of what you're working on? Are they able to relate back their project experience to what you guys are working on and kind of the future plans as well? So being prepared, following up, being able to have references in the industry. Construction's a really, really small industry. We always say everyone knows everyone, right? So making sure that they have strong references that can back them as well.
Yeah, I was on a job site last week at a builder developer with a hiring manager, and I was asking him that question of like, what types of questions does he ask to identify really strong candidates? I think he went back to that strong communication, track record of success, and a good tenure, but also putting the candidate on the spot and talking a little bit more about their personal situation, not just the technicalities of the position, to try and see if the candidate can open up and communicate effectively. Construction is a team game, so having people that can kind of communicate outside of work about not just construction is very important to certain employers, and it typically gets the right person involved in the project along the way. Everybody's looking to land the A+ talent, and having an interview assessment that's really well structured with a role that's clearly defined is a big help, and knowing the competencies that you're looking to assess at the interview stage. Some of the feedback we've got from candidates was making sure the feedback is shared quickly with them after the interview, and just keep the feedback loop up and running, that you're showing an interest in the candidate. If you don't like them, you can give them feedback quickly. Part of that is just having maybe 10 or 15 minutes after an interview happens, that every stakeholder can kind of debrief on how that interview went. If you do that, the best candidates will want to join your organization, and they're going to come back to you quickly with their feedback as well.
I think that's a great segue, Niall, to some of the pieces on attracting the talent, right? Because when a candidate gets into the interview, it's really potentially their first exposure to you as an organization. And so there's a number of things that people can do. And I often think that organizations believe, once the interview is booked, they've attracted the talent. But that's really where you need to start being really thoughtful and mindful about how you approach the conversation. So again, a mutually engaged interview process is really, really important. Things that candidates are going to be looking for when they sit down with you are a defined career path, right? So candidates, the ones that you're looking for are likely actively employed at a competitor of yours, let's say. So they're not just going to jump if there isn't a defined path, right? If they've been at a company 3, 5, 7 years, what can you offer them from a career perspective, and how can they play into that? Because when candidates make the jump, they don't want to jump for 12 to 24 months. They don't want to jump, to a job shop, let's say. They want a defined path. They want an understanding of the project pipeline. They want an understanding of how the business, the organization will continue to acquire future clients and future business. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's a fluid market, and good people cost money. We would recommend reviewing your base salary compensation every 6 to 12 months. Just stay that you're staying relevant to secure the best people. We always think it's a good idea to talk about compensation expectations at the first stage of the process to make sure the person you're speaking with is aligned. We would also mention that have a really clear picture of what your non-negotiables are and your values clear that are tied to your company culture. Your company culture is really important. Knowing your non-negotiables and assessing them at interview stage, and you won't sacrifice the character of your company just for bringing people on with proper skill sets, but not necessarily will be great to work with. If you can nail down these, I think you'll have a team of really strong, talented people that are actually committed to your culture and committed to the mission, and just being open and transparent about what you're looking for in a person. We believe it's absolutely key and fundamental as a building block to have the salary, the career progression, the talent development, and the flexibility at the first and second round interview, that it's all being talked about, because it's one of the major factors that attracts candidates for moving jobs, for all those 4 pieces, as well as having like strong benefits. I'm not sure, Grace, have you seen many candidates turn down jobs based on the benefits piece?
Frequently, unfortunately. And we recommend our organizations review their benefits package every 12 months, but also that the organization's benefits package are reflective of the organization's values and are reflective of the talents that they're trying to hire. So, we mentioned earlier in the conversation that women are in high demand, in the construction space. And I've sat and spoken on different panels about the exact same topic. How do we get more women involved? Well, if we're being a little bit stereotypical, historically, women have caretaking responsibilities as well. right? And so are you providing a benefits package? Are you providing a flexible working model where she or anybody that has caretaking responsibilities can effectively do their work and do their responsibilities outside of work? And so really being mindful and aware, and every 12 months assessing, what are we offering? How is our business structured? Is it structured in a way that the talent that we want can actually come work here in a meaningful way? Or is it structured in a way where it's just always been this way? So we have to try to kind of fit a square peg into a round hole. So the willingness to review, the willingness to adapt, benefits are really important. It is a big piece of the decision. And that's definitely something candidates are asking more about right now.
Yeah, I think one word I would use is transparency. I think we've seen a big shift with candidates looking for transparency on bonus models, that they're written into offers, that they're aware of what the offers are. If we're talking about flexibility, and if they're saying you can work from home on a Friday, we've only really seen 1 day from home as the standard. The days of working 3-4 days from home are kind of gone. But just having that in writing, it gives the candidate much more comfortability when they're accepting to choose to join an organization, that they have transparency on what the base is, what the bonus is, but also on the flexibility. I think it's really important. I think the big thing we've seen in 2023, as people talk about recessions and the markets becoming slightly volatile, would be communicating what your pipeline looks like over the next 2, 3, 4 years. People like to join organizations not just for one project, but for a number of projects. I think they can see a home in an organization. So just articulating out what your project pipeline looks like is a really strong indicator. So when someone goes in to resign from their current company, we do see a lot of risks with their current company offering buybacks to keep strong talent. But the differentiator, if you can give a much stronger project pipeline, much more transparency on the bonus model, transparency on the flexibility, transparency in the benefits, you're putting yourself in a really strong position to secure some top talent across the area. What we wanted to share next was just some best practices in construction during the interview. Grace, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is something that, after every interview, whether it's a first round kind of phone screen or a Teams call or, a job site walk, what have you, we're debriefing with the candidates, getting their feedback on what's working, what's not working. And so there's definitely some key themes across the industry. One is engagement throughout the interview process, hands down, I think is the most important piece. And it's the piece that organizations really do struggle with, Niall. And I completely appreciate why, right? There's so much going on right now. When you're vice president of construction, let's say, your first priority probably isn't needing to do this interview today, but being mindful of how the person on the other end of the table and the conversation feels, I think is really, really important. So, keeping a tight time frame, making sure that your process from start to finish doesn't take more than 2 weeks, making sure that candidates are getting, feedback. We always say momentum matters, right? When we're talking about interview processes, momentum matters. And candidates feel that, they're never going to be more excited than right when they leave your office or they leave your job site after speaking with someone they've really, enjoyed speaking with. And so building on that, I think, is really, really important. My best recommendation is when you book in the interview, book in an opportunity to sit down with the stakeholders within 24 hours so that candidate can get some feedback. Even if you're not able to lock in the next interview for another few days or potentially till the following week, them knowing, oh my goodness, they liked me, I'm engaged, right? That they're interested is important, because companies are doing that. And if you're the company, if they're interviewing at 3 organizations and you're the one that's kind of dragging your feet the most, they just start to lose interest. So the consistent communication really is key.
Yeah, I love the momentum matters. We maybe should hashtag it after the event and get a trend.
Hopefully our marketing team's watching.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think at the end of the day, people want to feel valued and have a place in the team. So that's why we talk about ensuring candidates meet all the relevant stakeholders and peers, because the interview is an experience of what they're going to find in day 1 to day 30 to day 60 to day 90. And we have had some feedback before where the interview has been amazing, the experience has been amazing, but the induction process has been not too welcoming. So just having a structured welcoming plan, knowing what they're doing in their first week, welcoming them to the team, the people that they meet at interview stage, they meet in their first week, just to make sure they're part of the team, is a really important piece. I think we touched on explaining what the project backlog was, but also just touching on the project backlog is important, but what's the long-term vision of the business to get the candidate to buy into them. Again, base salary is important, but knowing what you're doing as an organization, to touch back on that meeting I did last week, was if you're really passionate about building a particular project and you really love doing construction, you'll join a firm for a particular project, or you'll join a firm for a mission. It doesn't always have to come back to the base salary piece. And also, like, interviews are a two-way street. So I think both parties have to like represent themselves articulately, sell what they have to offer, and make sure that there's match there. And if you do that correctly, you'll typically 9 times out of 10 find a really good person to join your organization for the long term.
I think the authenticity piece is really important too. And we kind of touched on this, but organizations struggle to retain talent. And a lot of times it comes back to the interview process, whereby maybe the organization represented themselves in a way that wasn't necessarily reflective of who they are and where they're going, because they really wanted to get the person in the door and hope it works. And that's where retention issues come into play. Candidates, same thing though. I think everyone just has to bring their authentic selves to the table. Both parties need to be engaged. Both parties need to prepare. I think there's kind of this old school mindset around, did the candidate prepare for the interview? And I think there's something to that. Candidates, if you're listening, definitely prepare for the interview. But I talk to my client partners all the time too about their preparation. And especially if it's a second round interview, have you been mindful of what you think that candidate needs to see and who they need to meet with? And have you built in some flexibility to the process? If you have a streamlined process, that's great. But making sure they get all the information and that it's accurate and that it's reflective of who the business really is. I think it's really important.
Yeah. And some of our best clients have interview days. So Monday afternoon or Thursday morning. So the schedules are aligned. All the important people are in one room at the same time to interview talent. And then they take 10 to 15 minutes later to debrief, to give some feedback. Some of the common questions that we've faced with to kind of take some of the stress out of hiring that you kind of leads a little bit more success would be kind of what we talked about early. Transparency is key, like setting a realistic salary range budget. But before you even speaking to the candidate, do you have flex with the salary range? Because it might come down to 3K, 4K, 5K in getting someone across the line. So have a little bit of wiggle room, and we'd encourage firms to at least have one conversation with the person first and see where it leads. There's a lot that goes on into a job, and base is just one piece of the component. Like PTO, we talked about transparency of bonuses, explaining career progression, are all factors that will potentially get the candidate interested and makes the resigning from their current company a little bit smoother. What have you seen, Grace?
Yeah, I think being really transparent and clear on what your organization can offer is really, really important. But when you find a candidate, when you find a resume that meets really what you're looking for, if that candidate, potentially on their application has asked for a bit more than that range, I would always recommend just taking the conversation, right? Are you missing out on somebody that could really be a game changer? Like we've been talking about, over $10,000, $15,000 on an application, when actually when you sit down, there could be flexibility in other pieces of the package. And so I think, especially in this day and age, 30 minutes on a Teams call, it's never been easier to connect. And so just being flexible, and maybe somebody's willing to be creative or flexible on the back end. So I always say, if they really meet what you're looking for, take the conversation, be transparent. And if they're excellent, if everybody's willing to kind of come to the table and have some flexibility on what they're asking for and what they're looking for, that's really where some of the best matches happen.
What's your top tip to ensure you don't miss out on a candidate like you like? I think Grace touched on transparency. Sharing the feedback along you go is really important. I know it sounds really basic, but it is very important. I think second thing would be making sure you put everything in the offer letter, so there's no back and forth happening. We've seen a couple of firms lately put contingent offers out after the first interview, that there will be a second interview, but at least they see what the offer letter looks like. So I thought that was interesting. The offer letters are not non-binding, but again, it gives the candidate the transparency. Okay, they like me. This is what a potential offer would look like. What have you seen around, I suppose, tips of not to miss out on the very best candidates?
Yeah, no, I just think it's important to remember that interviewing, it's not a game, and there's really great practices that help organizations secure top talent. And then there's practices that really aren't so great. So if you like a candidate, let them know that you like them. If they're asking for something from a salary perspective that you can provide, don't lowball them on the first offer. If you can meet it, bring them on board, make them feel really, really excellent day one, and then you'll have an easier time retaining them in the long run. So the authenticity piece, the momentum piece, and just making sure that you're being honest and open and communicative. It's all very simple, but it's stuff that gets missed a lot just with the speed with which things move. And getting people into the same room. That's really where we're seeing candidates withdraw from processes because it's taking too long, or they feel like they're not being heard throughout the course of the interview.
Yeah, and I suppose we've never used a recruitment partner before. Like, what's the value? I think Grace touched on speed, so I think I touched on a little bit earlier. We did, I think, 31,263 interviews last year in 2022. So we do a lot of marketing. We make sure our candidates are aware of multiple opportunities, so we can share multiple opportunities with candidates rather than just one. And we have the number one engagement across LinkedIn for construction job views. So speed is one of the big things that we can help people with, is getting access to candidates quicker. What else, Grace?
I think the piece that you touched on there is really interesting. Candidates reach out to us because they know that we'll have multiple opportunities to speak with them about. If you're, an internal talent acquisition partner, obviously you're representing your organization tremendously well. But, construction's a small space. So if they don't necessarily know you right off the bat, or if they've heard something through the space that maybe didn't necessarily align with what, they're looking for or what they're attracted to, we at least always have the opportunity to pitch, to have a conversation, to walk through and really kind of figure out and tease apart what would and wouldn't be a good fit for the candidate. So I think that piece is really important. That's why candidates come to us. The confidentiality piece also is why they're interested in working with recruitment partners, but the speed and the quality piece is really huge.
And we give a greater choice of candidate selection. On average, we're sending close to 5 candidate resumes to every job. You're dealing with a really well local network team across North America that have their own networks, and they are recruitment experts. They have local knowledge. They'll help you navigate a competitive talent market along the way as well. That's all from us. Hopefully you found it helpful. We plan to do a couple of more of these sessions and help share and uncover some of the valuable insights we're seeing across the construction sector and what we're seeing. The pandemic has definitely impacted how people think about their careers and changes how they engage in job searches. So our website is a really good first step in looking at that. We've got some really good free reports on salary guides, on budgeting. We've released a talents trends report that's global as well. That had about 70,000 people come back. That give you some top tips on that as well. All our jobs are hosted through our website also. Please reach out to myself or Grace on LinkedIn if you need any further information on what we discussed today. Grace, would you like to sign off?
No, we hope to connect with you soon. We're always happy to network, connect one-on-one to discuss best tips, practices. So like Niall said, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. Thanks for everyone jumping in, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah. Happy Thursday, everybody.